So after understanding, the directive principles, what are the categories of directive principles, from where they are derived, what is the source of inspiration, also like, what is the importance of directive principles. So we should somewhere conclude that what is the overview of these directive principles, or what is the overall, intention of these directive principles. So the common goal of all these directive principles can be summed up in a single word called welfare state. So this welfare state can explain the entire objectives of directive principles. So let us see what is this welfare state. A welfare state is a state which seeks to ensure maximum happiness to maximum number of people living within an area. So if a group of people are living within an area, you refer here state as a nation. So in our country, we live in a particular boundaries. So if all the people of the country, or if the maximum number of people of our country lives with maximum happiness, then such country is said to be a welfare oriented country or a welfare state. So that kind of objective is projected by the directive principles, and the Constitution of India seeks to establish India as a welfare state. So the purpose of incorporating directive principles is to make this nation a welfare state or a welfare oriented nation. See, because after independence, majority of the population lived in poverty, many social evils were there were many kind of differences among people. So to uplift people in various ways and to provide welfare for them, the constitutional makers have incorporated directive principles. And these directive principles, their objective is to create welfare state. So here, even though the word welfare state is not mentioned specifically in the Constitution, the directive principles incorporation itself reveals that the makers of Constitution wants India to progress towards a welfare oriented country, and they even want the political system of India to proceed towards welfare programs, so that people can achieve maximum, people can remain happy with maximum. See here, maximum people remaining happy means having all the basic needs. So like food, shelter, clothing, so like medical and health facilities, having good food security in India, so everything. So they all come under the people's maximum happiness parameters. So these directive principles, they direct the political system of India towards welfare state. See, in directing the people towards welfare state, or in directing the country towards welfare state, these directive principles, they emphasize, that means they give more importance to the dignity of the citizens, as well as having political and social justice for people. Politically, that means people should have active participation in all the political processes of the country. Having right to vote is a very political thing, and also you can talk about having certain rights for people. This all comes under the political justice of the people. And you take social justice of people, that means in a society people should live with equal opportunities, freedom, equally they should be treated. All such things come under social justice. And economic justice means financially, the resources should be equally distributed to all the citizens of the nation, so by which we can achieve economic justice. This economic, political and social justice is achieved through directive principles by Indian polity. So the Indian political system, they use these directive principles to achieve all such good goals for the people. And in India, for the past 6 decades, the governments have been working relentlessly to implement these directive principles, so that finally they can achieve the goal of welfare state. A welfare state will definitely have people with maximum people with maximum happiness. And when people will be maximum happy, when they have all this social, economic, political justice, and along with the basic needs, and along with the dignity of the individual. If all these things are covered, then the people will proceed towards a welfare state. And see, already the governments from the beginning after independence have been working on these, formulas, various plans like 5-year plans. See, if a government is elected within 5 years, they can't do all the things, and no, they can't change the fate of the country. So what they did, every 5 years they set up some goals. I suppose this year economically they brought some reforms. Next year they have brought some socially good reforms. Like this every 5 years, the 5-year plans started by our governments were very helpful in the implementation of directive principles, so that these directive principles will later contribute to the formation of welfare state. So this is about the welfare state. So just now in the discussion of the directive principles and welfare state, we have come across a point called social equality and justice. So by achieving social equality and justice through directive principles, there is a lot of scope for the achievement of welfare state. So let us now understand what is this social equality and justice. So under social equality, there is the union and state governments. They have been taking several steps. So to achieve this equality in society and justice in society equally for all, then the central governments and state governments have tried to implement through this directive principle, so that this can be achieved, the equality in society and can be achieved. So under that programs, Right to Education Act was one such program taken up by our central and state governments. So under this Right to Education Act, every child between age of 6 to 14 should be provided free education in all government and government aided schools. Also, this act will require all private schools to reserve 25% of seats for the children belonging to economically weaker sections. So the Right to Education Act, the primary purpose is to have education, or to have at least schooling for all the children below, or for all the children between the age groups 6 to 14 years. So all these children who are having age group between 6 and 14 years, they have to go. This is not optional. They must and should go for schools. And these people, or these kids between these age groups, will be provided free education in all the government schools and government aided schools. So government aided schools means like they get funding from the government, whereas government schools means they're directly run by governments. So government schools and government aided schools should provide compulsory and free education to all the children. Also, the private schools which run by the private managements should reserve 25% of the seats in their schools free of cost to these economically poor people or economically poor children. So private people, they do in the orientation of business, but 25% of their seats should be reserved for economically weaker people for free. And these public and private, in both sectors, if education is brought compulsory between this age group of children, and if they are uplifted, so once educationally people become schooling is done very well, then there is a very good chance of getting into a better opportunities, so that they can earn better and they can change the standard of living, which is nothing but achieving equality in society. And to make these children achieve that social equality, what the government is doing, it has made education compulsory. Also, just by providing education compulsory, it doesn't work out. So what the government is doing, it is also providing scholarships for socially and economically weaker sections. So for many centuries, there are some groups of people in India, they have faced a lot of evils, and now economically and socially they were no little bit backward. So for all such people, the government is providing even scholarships. That means helping money, giving money to the economically and socially backward children, so that they can join the schools and other areas very effectively. And also there is a system of reservation given for these children in jobs and in educational institutions. Like we have a reservation system with SC, ST, scheduled caste, tribes, backward communities and economically weaker sections. We have a lot of such reservations. So why do you think reservations have been given? There doesn't bring, see, reservations are not for creating differences among the people, but as for many centuries, certain groups of people have faced socially and economically a lot of problems. If they were given education free and scholarships were provided, they will come with a lot of interest and they'll join the schools and they get education. And even after getting into education and all, as their forefathers and their families have never been into education, they may find it difficult to just accommodate to the system of jobs and all, and they may not compete very actively like how other children may compete. So these economically and socially poor children, socially backward children, to give them motivation, the governments have even provided reservations, so that even in jobs as well as joining educational institutes, they get motivation to join, and now they can change the standard of living and contribute to social equality. And the 5-year plans have worked on these welfare programs more, and now like introducing all these kind of scholarship things, and now bringing right to education and all, and untouchability, which was a very severe and which was a very danger most evil that was in practice, was completely abolished through a law, and if anyone practices it in any form, it is a crime now, so that the socially backward communities can live with dignity equally with everybody in society. So just now we have seen how the social equality can be achieved through right to education, so which is a major thing in the implementation of directive principles. So let us now proceed towards how to achieve the economic welfare or the economic equality. See, when the country got its independence, economically there were many poor people in the country, because the land was under the control of certain feudalistic people. That means now the zamindars. So which where this system has begun in Mughals time and others time, period, where all the land of the village or the village, all the land was under the control of single person. And even after independence, these zamindars, they enjoyed the rights on land, and the poor remained poor always, because they were not having any land with them so that they can earn their living. So what the government thought was, the economic welfare can be achieved by the abolition of this zamindari system and introducing land reforms. So land reforms, nothing but the governments will take away the land from these zamindars, and the zamindari system will be totally abolished, and this land will be distributed to the landless people. And so the government has done this. The first and foremost thing the government has done was abolition of zamindari system and introduction of land reforms, so that the economic activity will even start among the poorest of the poor. And in the other way, where the people of the nation are having economically inequality, is in the land acquisition. Suppose many companies through governments or the other ways, they try to come and acquire some land for starting a big company or some other things. During such things, what will happen? The people in that area may lose their land and they may become jobless. So to make or to look after such people's welfare, right to fair compensation and transparency in land acquisition, rehabilitation and resettlement bill 2013 was passed by Parliament, and by January 2014 it came into effect for the for the benefit of people who have lost their land in various activities of the government or the private sector, to come into protection of those people. This right to fair compensation and transparency in land acquisition, rehabilitation and resettlement bill has been passed and implemented from 2014. See what this act will aim, or what is the use of this law. This law will make either it is a government agency or non-government agency to acquire a land legally. So according to the law, they have to acquire the land. They cannot go and acquire as they wish. They cannot take away the forest areas. They cannot take away the crop cultivated lands as they like. So as per law, some guidelines will be given. Accordingly, they have to acquire the land. And not only acquiring the land. So acquiring the land is having some safeguards now here through the law. Not only acquisition of land, but also rehabilitation and resettlement of that is very important. See, for example, if a big project is being constructed, a water project or a big dam is to be constructed, what governments will do, they have to vacate a lot of villages under the land, so that when dam is constructed, they cannot live anymore there, because the water flow will be there and all the villages will get drowned. So what happens, the government has to vacate all those people in the villages. The villages mostly they are dependent on the agricultural land and agriculture. So what governments will do at the time, they have to go for rehabilitation and resettlement. So rehabilitation means they have to get these people, see, just acquiring the land legally and sending them off will not finish. That doesn't mean the job is finished. Once they have lost the land, the government has to show somewhere another land for them to work. And also, till they come back to normal life in their new place, the government has to settle them through various schemes of the government programs, so that rehabilitation and resettlement is also guaranteed for such people who have lost their land in acquisitions. This act also provides for fair compensation for those whose land is taken away. That means, see, the governments or private agencies, they cannot pay compensation as they like. When they are taking their land, they cannot pay how much there is a chance of paying very less and not taking away the lands. So to avoid such misfunctions of government or private agencies, this act will safeguard the people who lost the land, so that they get the compensation in the form of money, as per the market rates, or no more than the market rate. So generally during construction of factories and infrastructure projects like like this dams and other things, the compensation will be paid to people. Later they will be shown some kind of areas to have land, and they will allow them to settle through various schemes and programs. And this act was replaced by Land Acquisition Act 1894, which was a 120-year-old law during Britishers. So such a old law has been replaced with 2013 bill, so which is very helpful for the. So under the economic welfare, another major important step that the government has took was the nationalization of banks. See, what do you mean by nationalization of banks? All the banks which were started after independence, they were all taken under the control of central government. The central government will monitor all the affairs of the bank. Not only banks, even insurance companies were also taken away by central government. There is no free activity of private people in that banking areas when these banks were begun after independence in our beginning days. So how does this nationalization of banks and other insurance companies and other things or taking away by central government will help us to achieve economic equality? See, I'll tell you this. There were 14 top nationalized banks. 14 top banks were nationalized during the time of Indira Gandhi. So you can see the paper clip, in the slide presented there. Indira Gandhi has taken a very unanimous decision to nationalize all the banks. And I'll quote her words here. And what is the purpose of nationalizing banks? She said that the purpose of bank nationalization or taking control of banks by central government is to make the banks fund for the agricultural activities and to help the small scale industries to start and develop. If all the banks are in the hands of private people, they always think in the profit mind, and they may not help these important areas like agriculture and other small industries. They may become very profitable, and they drive themselves towards profits all the time, and they may be always visualizing towards rich people. But Indira Gandhi said the purpose was, if banks are under the control of major banks are under the control of central government, then the government can direct the banks always for the betterment of agriculture as well as small scale industries. So if agriculture sector is being helped through these banks by loans and other ways, or if these banks are involved in developing small industries, then that will be more beneficial for the nation. Majority of the community in the country will have benefit from that banks. So that was the intention, so that economically they will have the help of banks from the very basic level of the community. So thus the nationalization of banks helped this country very much. And also the other thing is, to ensure just payment to the workers, equal pay for equal work, Minimum Wages Act 1948 was framed, and it is amended time to time. See, many people will get employment, and most of the employment is in the labor sector, where they depend on wages, day-to-day wage they'll get, and accordingly they have to survive. So if the owner or the employer tries to give or tries to exploit the laborers, then it is a big problem for the achieving economic equality. So if the owners try to exploit their laborers or workers by giving less wages, then what happens? The economic equality may not be possible. Hence, what the government has did, the government has brought Minimum Wages Act 1948. That means every employer have to pay certain minimum wage to that employee. So less than that minimum wage is not allowed. It will be a crime under government law. So Minimum Wages Act safeguards and the laborers, and they'll be getting a fair amount of wages and equal pay for equal work. And also this act has been amended every time to time, because when we suppose you take 5 years, 10 years, the the wages will be having a hike, and according to that hike and according to the prices of that period, definitely the wages should also rise. So every time to time, what happens, the prices of products and goods increases, and paying similar wages all the time is not a good formula. So what the government did, it also amended this Minimum Wages Act from time to time as per the prices in the country, so that the labor will get benefited from this act and achieve the economic equality or economic welfare. So you can see the graph in the slide, where how the minimum wages have per day started rising from many years. So it was earlier 50 rupees per day, slowly it rose to 100 rupees per day, 150, 200. It was rising every time to time, so that it goes with the economic welfare, which is also a incorporated principle in directive principles. So another important step taken by Government of India was dealing with healthcare system. So health is also a very important parameter to measure the happiness of the people. So, to take care of the health of the people, the government of India has started a program by name Ayushman Bharat Yojana. So here Yojana means a plan. So this is a central government sponsored scheme. So that means the central government will bear all the expenses of this planning, and it was launched in 2018. And what the government did was, there were some other earlier plans before this 2018, like health and wellness centers and national health protection scheme. These two were merged in 2018 and they created a common program called Ayushman Bharat Yojana, and this was started in 2018. So under this scheme, it almost covers 10 crore people who are very poor and they cannot afford good medical facilities, and who are vulnerable families. That means because of the works they do, because of the the areas they reside, they are prone to, or they are exposed to certain kind of diseases. There are many kinds of not abnormalities with the people. If you take a particular area, there all the water will be with fluoride. That area people will have lot of disadvantages with that fluoride water, and they'll be getting lot of problems with that. So such people are called vulnerable people. Because of the natural elements present there, they'll be vulnerable to different kinds of diseases. And in general, poor people, they fall under different categories of diseases and many areas. So to help those poor people, this Ayushman Bharat program was taken up by the government of India. Almost it benefits 10 crore people, and this program is a merged program of National Health Protection Scheme and Wellness Centers program. So health and wellness centers program, these two programs were merged and this common program was created. So what is the use of this program? Under this program, the families will get a coverage of 5 lakh rupees for secondary and tertiary care hospitalization. So the families who are who are in need of medical facilities, or who are prone to such vulnerabilities, will get a 5 lakh worth medical coverage from the central government completely free. So these they have mentioned here that secondary and tertiary care hospitalization. This terminology, generally you can hear with the medical people. So what is primary, secondary and tertiary health services? Primary, generally certain basic health, having telling people about how to be hygienic, having giving small treatments like fever treatment and all. They come under the primary health care, and providing hygienic facilities, asking them to be hygienic with various habits and all, they come under primary health care. Secondary and tertiary, they are a bit advanced level. Secondary care, if you take secondary care and all, this will be, suppose if primary healthcare system, they cannot deal a particular disease and all, they'll refer this to secondary care, like district hospitals and some health centers, where specialists will be there to monitor these poor people who got vulnerable to many complicated diseases. Generally, a next level hospital will do. Primary healthcare will generally function at village level and all, and if they cannot deal a particular health issue, they will refer this to secondary health centers like district hospitals and other higher specialized hospitals. And tertiary health care, so this is the third level of health system, where specialized diagnoses and like more complicated diseases and surgeries and all may happen for the people who got vulnerable. So like advanced medical system will work for the betterment of the people. So in such healthcare, like let it be primary, secondary or tertiary healthcare, the central government will provide a coverage of 5 lakh rupees. So the people can go, they can get treated for almost 5 lakh rupees worth any ill health. Under this, like even they can go to private hospitals as well as government hospitals. they can get these benefits from both private and public hospitals. So thus public-private partnership is ensuring for the health of the people, so that if they are healthy, then it adds to the happiness of the people. So which is again the proceeding towards the welfare state, which was a main objective of the directive principles. So another important program taken up by the central government is Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. So this scheme was launched, or this program was launched on January 13th, 2016. So what is this, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana? So it was also a, previously it was, generally referred as agricultural insurance program of the central government, and later all such programs were brought under a single common program called Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. So this is basically an insurance plan for the farmers in the country. So we know that India is an agricultural dependent country. So in this country, the role of farmer is very important. So to protect the farmer and to have the farmer is rescue during the failure of crops, the government has brought this program so that it encourages the farmer without any worries to go for cultivation. Here, under this scheme, the farmers will have to pay a uniform premium of 2% for all Karif crops and 1.5% for all Rabi crops. So here I'll discuss what are these Karif and Rabi crops, so within a less span of time. So these are the seasons, okay, basically they are the seasons, and each season the farmer will go for different crops. So if it is Rabi season crops, the farmers have to pay a premium of 1.5 and 2, and if it is if it is Rabi, they have to pay 1.5, and if it is Kharif, they have to pay 2%. So what is this premium? See, generally these insurance companies will be taken into account here, and these farmers from their side they have to pay a nominal premium, that means minimum amount as insurance, and the later amount will be paid by government for bringing all the crops into insurance coverage. For example, I'll make it so simple that if a crop fails and it is worth some 100 rupees, so what the farmer has to do, he has to pay some 10 to 20 rupees as premium amount in advance, and the remaining 80 rupees will be paid by government. And even though if it is lost, for example, at the end of the season of the crop, if something goes wrong and the crop fails, then the farmer is remaining helpless. At this situation, the insurance money will come, so that the 100 rupees which he, the 10 rupees which he paid, or the 20 rupees which he paid, along with the 80 which is paid by government to insurance company, it will be given to the farmer so that he can go for next cultivation, and he cannot be neglected because of not having money. So Rabi and Karif crops will be also having this insurance coverage. Even horticultural crops of farmers were also brought, but they have to pay a premium of 5%, and the remaining is paid by the government. So here, what is horticultural? These vegetables, fruits and all, garden crops and all, they will be growing. So even they are covered under Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, and if any, they also pay certain premium of 5%, and the rest is paid by central government, so that if any, natural calamity or something happens and the crop gets damaged or the crop fails, through the insurance companies, the farmers will receive money. And under this program, there is no upper limit on the government subsidy. So there is no bar that the government will pay only this much and all. So even if it is 90%, the government can pay. So but minimum premium should be paid by the farmers, and the maximum limit of the government is no restriction. they can pay. Sometimes they even ask the farmers not to pay premium. The entire insurance coverage is paid because it depends on the calamity it happened there. So under this program, not only insurance coverage is done, but what happens is this program will cover even the farm level assessment of calamities, including hailstorms, unseasonal rains, landslides, and inundation. So that means, here what happens during natural calamities. So what will happen, that crops and all will get damaged. So when they get damaged, the assessment of that, land, how much crop has failed, how much compensation has to pay, how much this insurance companies has to pay, all such things will be looked after by this program only. Also, this even covers, these natural calamities are different types, right? Hailstorms, unseasonally rains will come, landslides will damage the crops, and inundation, which are nothing but floods. So here inundation means floods. Due to floods and other things, the crops get damaged. During such situations, under this program, the governments can even pay compensation. Along with the insurance they have got as a protection, they also get such compensation from governments. So now, this is about the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana program. When we were discussing about the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, or the national insurance scheme for the farmers, so we have spoken about the Karif and Rabi crops. So let me just give you an idea about what is this Karif and Rabi crops. So Karif crops are generally monsoon crops, and they are planted in June and harvested in October. So they need more water, so they depend on monsoons for that water. And you take rice, maize, cotton and groundnuts, they require more water, so they are planted just before the rainy season. And with the monsoons rains, they can get abundant water, and hence they are called Karif crops. And there is Rabi crops. Generally they are called winter crops. They are planted in November and harvested in April, even though they require more humidity and all, like wheat, barley, peas and grams, they'll be grown in this Rabi season. So we have discussed it, right? These Karif and Rabi crops were generally covered under, generally they cover the most two seasons. Zaid is another season, but no, it is just like a very short span crops. But here the Rabi and Karif are the major seasonal crops, and the majority of farmers in India, they plant in these two seasons, and they are dependent most on this kind of cultivation activities. So the government has covered the Pradhan Mantri scheme for these two seasonal crops, and many more will be generally added based on the necessity from time to time.